wishes.
Yeah. Oh, man.
Sometimes
That's so
I'm
hard.
dead.
Right?
Oh, for hell's sake. I swear. It's just
Sister's
Oh.
mother-in-law.
Nothing wants
She said, she was. Oh, great, that's what we're gonna need.
Like, she walked out there when it started working. Yeah, we went and visited my wife's dad he's in a assisted living home now. I mean, he's 70. And you walk around, you see everyone else
Yeah,
Catch it.
but between the pavilion, the pickleball courts, the playground is huge.
Mhm.
And I bet you I get at least one or two complaints a week when I'm there. Like I've been there a couple weeks, but
You said that?
Go ahead and start your stuff. You're recording.
All right, I want to welcome everyone. Welcome. This is City of Cottonwood Heights. It's Tuesday, September 7th. Right at 5 p.m. This is our work session for this first Monday in September. So once again, welcome, and refer you to our agenda. And the first item on the agenda, this is something we typically have done annually. I'm not sure we did it last year because of the COVID challenges, but we'd like to welcome the Executive Director of the Cottonwood Heights Parks and Recreation Service Area to take a few minutes and give us an update as to what's happening in the service area. So Ben, come on up.
Where would you want me? Right here.
Right there, yeah. Unless you want to sit somewhere else.
Well, if you want me to stand, I'm gonna sit and I'm
Well,
gonna.
if you got,
I practice standing up, so. Okay, well, I'm glad to be here. It's always good to be amongst our partners. I'm Ben Hill. I'm the Executive Director of the Cottonwood Heights Park and Recreation Service Area. The service area was created in 1967. I thought I'd just give some facts and then go into some 2020 things and then 2021 things and just be here for some questions and answers. Our form of government is referred to as a local district. In all other 49 states, we would be considered a special district. But Utah had the name changed several years ago because there's also special service districts. And they thought that that was confusing, which we've now realized that was an error in changing the name, because with all the ARPA and different presidential letters that went out, they were naming special districts and special service districts, and we've got to go to the table and say, oh, that's us too. So the Utah Association of Special Districts is trying to get that changed back up on the Hill to special district. As a local district, we are governed by elected board of trustees with its own taxing authority. District 1 and District 2 are up for re-election in this November. They serve 4-year terms just like city council. Nearly 95% of the service area boundaries, upside down, is also 95% of the service area boundaries is in the city's boundaries. There's some couple pockets.
may show that, put it up here so the council can see it. No, just hold it up.
Pass it
like you
around.
did. Turn
That
it this
just
way.
so
No,
happens
just-
to be that my house is
Yeah.
outside of, my house is the 5%.
Yeah, so the shaded purple, pink area is the service area, and then you got the boundary of the city there.
See, I think it's interesting to note that the Crestwood area is not in,
Yep, so we're right here.
right down there.
There's Crestwood Park. You can see some of the park is, but not where the pool or the.
The
tennis
boundaries
courts are
being the
located.
creek rather than the road.
I bet that's right.
And if you notice too, Prospector is in. Is that, no, you know, what's the thing above Prospector there?
Here.
Yeah, see, Prospector's not in, yet above Prospector is in.
Mhm.
So it's, they feel that's something, when it was created, got miscommunicated.
Yeah, and then you have these small pockets, like, so we technically do have pockets in Murray, Sandy, unincorporated county, and Holiday even, but they're just really small neighborhood pockets.
And to become a member of the district, it has to be, you can't initiate it, it's initiated by the city or by the residents.
Mhm. Yep, and it's pretty tricky to do it, so unless you get full resident buy-in to do it, it's not worth it. Even if the city wanted to say, let's do it, it really comes down to the residents being able to vote it down.
Yeah.
So I think I wanted to show that, and I got another one a little bit later on. Let's see, I wanted to share the effects of COVID-19. I know we're kind of, we've heard it all of what happened in 2020, but I wanted to share some of those things. So the Recreation Center closed for nearly 2 months, March through June. After reopening under a cautious modified operation, the Recreation Center would continue to lose revenue as many patrons were still uncomfortable to attend. We then continued to lose revenue throughout the year as the months kept going with low attendance. Our membership revenue, which represents about 30% of our overall revenue, was probably the worst hit by that. People were hesitant to purchase or renew their membership, not knowing what the future held. In the process, we actually lost 2 full-time positions and cut as many expenditures as we could to just stay afloat, including all of our 2020 capital projects. And as you know, the areas that were still very busy were the parks. So although the rec center saw a decrease, the park saw an increase. So trying to make a balance there. We were lucky that we were able to open the outdoor pool nearly on time last year because it truly saved our organization from having to make additional cuts. We also increased our efforts in areas that weren't so affected by the pandemic. There was ice arena rentals, private lessons, ice lessons, swim team, swim lessons, ice programming. Basically the county's rec centers, which we all kind of team up to offer services for everyone. The county rec centers had to shut down, and many of those became places for people to as beds for COVID. And so a lot of the county residents came up to our center. And I think that was a good thing in some regards. In some regards, it put a big burden on the rec center, but it also kept our revenue coming. In 2020, I don't know if I think Scott Bracken, you shared this with us initially, but we were ranked nationally in 2020 as a top 20 ice skating rink across America. That was according to a Yelp study. So we came in right at number 20, but still we were on the list. So that was great nationally wide. So in summary for our 2020 effects, overall, our 2020 revenue compared to our overall actual 2019 revenue. So you took 2019 actual revenue compared to the 2020 actual revenue at the end of the day, we were down $730,000, which staff reacted and did what we needed to do to stay afloat. And actually to end the year, we were able to cut more than we lost in revenue. So that was a good sign. In 2020.
So you said you cut more than you lost in revenue. So that meant that your expenses and revenues were the same.
Yeah, so we
So you
still
didn't lose
finished.
money.
We still finished in the black as opposed to finishing in the red. Correct. We started off in 2021. We started off very cautious, but overall the year has gone great. We finally exceeded our monthly membership revenue goal in February of 2021. So every month we usually hit the revenue goal or it's a little bit above. For 12 months we were well below that range, but finally in February we hit that. And then in June of 2021, we actually set an all-time membership record in revenue for any month in service area history of over 130,000 just in 1 month. So it became popular again because the families wanted somewhere to go, but yet travel wasn't available. So I think that contributed to that. So right now, all of our programs are back on track and many of the patrons and citizens are grateful that we are back in full swing. We just recently got back from our 2021 URPA, Utah Parks and Recreation Association conference, where we were recognized for several awards. One of those was Outstanding Department in a population of 15,000 to 50,000. Outstanding Department, they use that because in terms of a city, Parks and Recreation would be a department. In our world, it's a little bit different, but that's saying that in that population, we were outstanding amongst our peers because of the efforts that were put into our 2020 efforts and to stay relevant and there for our public. We also had one of our staff that was recognized at this event, our custodial manager, Roz Davenport. She got recognized as an outstanding professional in her field, which I think was really awesome. It was actually the first time URPA had ever recognized a custodial manager or employee, because when the pandemic hit and what we've had to do from that moment was a lot laid heavy on our custodial to keep the place clean and people safe and reassured that it was safe to come. Roz has worked up there for 27 years and her staff worked really hard during the pandemic. We also, just like we had named our pickleball courts after the mayor, Michael J. Peterson pickleball courts, URPA followed up with naming a scholarship after Mike, which was the Learn and Lead Scholarship. And we were fortunate enough to have 2 of our staff members be awarded that scholarship will, they'll go learn and they'll come back and teach others in the state what they learned from a conference. But that's contributed to how Mike has had his careers, learning and then giving it back to others. So I think that's a perfect thing to be named after him. We had a past employee be recognized as a Lifetime Achievement Award in Patty Hansen. And so typically what the URPA does is they then come and present those awards on the city level or at a board trustee level. And we've got the Big Cottonwood Canyon Marathon happening this week, which we appreciate the donation to the foundation on the city's behalf for that. And that I think is on October 19th. That they'll be presenting the check on that date.
Yeah, I believe so. Second meeting. Is October, yes.
Yeah, and so maybe we can talk about maybe having URPA also come that day to present the awards to the service area, but in front of city council. I think would be a great place to take that. So beyond 2021 and the lasting effects of the pandemic, staffing issues continue to be a problem. You hear about it in every restaurant, every field. But we've had tremendous difficulties staffing our park crews, our aquatic lifeguards, and had to modify schedules, modify times, even at the rec center to accommodate the swimming. And then going forward, how do we increase wages to continue to draw these part-time employees in? Our year-end cash balance loss. So the way that we are able to fund capital projects is we generate revenue compared to our expenditures. At the end of the year, we have our year-end cash balance, which then we can put into a project. So although we finished in the black, that amount that's in our piggy bank in order to spend on capital projects did not grow, and it just stayed. Luckily this year, 2022 is or 2021 is the bond will be paid off fully. So in 2022, we will not have a bond. Neither will we have a TAN, which we've had forever. And I don't know if there's a date when we didn't have a TAN.
No, tax anticipation note is, that's been hard to survive on that for decades.
Yeah, so that is
Which
making
means
sure
you
that
just
we
borrow from the bank in anticipation of taxes coming in.
in November. Yeah,
So your final payment on those bonds will be done in this December.
Yep, December will be paid off, and so residents will see a decrease in their taxes next year from the property tax, which we promised would happen. In
I was going to ask about that, and part of that was, because that's not tied as a separate line item, that's part of your general.
That's property tax.
Yeah, property tax, and in the property tax, there's the allowable amount percentage by law, and then there's also the bond tied into that. So the bond amount will drop off, and that's about $800,000 overall that we pay each year on that. Let's see what else. And so although we've been trying to accumulate money at the end of the year for our cash year-end balance to do capital projects, we never really have had it, because you can't really have a savings if you're in debt into a TAN. It just, on January, you have all this money you think you have to do a capital project, and then January 1st it goes away because it's there to help with the TAN until the TAN is paid off. So we're finally in the position where we can move forward on getting some much needed O&M and capital projects in place, which was the purpose behind raising taxes in 2019, was to get us there faster.
Yeah, that was the promise to the constituents, that tax increase would go into the operations and salary and benefits and stuff like that.
Yep. And so now we finally got there, and then all of a sudden the pandemic hits and kind of just puts a hold up to that. But not an over surmountable one, but in the ARPA and things that we've been talking about, that's going to help us just get right back on track. So the city council has been considering that. I think that is kind of what I wanted to share. The Parks, Trails, and Open Space, being a part of that's been great. I think that's going well. And then, of course, hopefully next year I can come again in the first quarter or so, a recap of 2021, and I can get a PowerPoint presentation put together and kind of share how.
And maybe for the record, I know in our last meeting, we talked about our recovery funds, which you would be a part of that benefit as we are as a city. And you've documented the shortage in your revenues under $400,000
Of eligible funding, yeah.
Right, and it's your commitment to us that will go into capital open space improvements, i.e. Anzac Park or
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah, so what I did is I brought the master plan that we did in 2019. So the idea was, okay, we're gonna raise property tax in 2019. Let's get a master plan of Anzac Park going so we can make those improvements. We actually then set aside $150,000 of that initial tax increase to go towards repurposing the tennis courts. But that was a matching fund with track. And then we weren't successful in getting the matching fund with track. And then it didn't really matter anyways, because that's when the world fell apart with the pandemic. So we banked that 150 for a later day. So we still have that. We've gone after land water conservation funds this year to try to get a 50-50 match with that money we already had for Anzac Park. And then the opportunity with ARPA has come up. So this has over $1 million worth of improvements that went through a public process. And so that amount of the just under 400,000 would all go directly into Anzac Park, and in hopes that we can still match it with that 150 that we have to turn it into nearly $500,000 or a little over $500,000 project. The biggest things we heard from the budget from the public process was the tennis courts are one of them is not usable anymore. The other one's not far behind. This one's totally off, and then this one has severe cracks in it too. They're just not made with post tension, so it becomes really difficult with the climate in Utah. And then the other most popular thing was the walking trails. That's been a really big hit. So we can get the resurfacing done, the walking trails, but if we can, just like some of our other parks, our playgrounds are all in need of upgrades. But what's great about Anzac is we got the master plan in place. We're ready to go. We just need the funding. So yes, we are committed to putting that entire amount into Anzac Park. That will allow us to then.
But that's only half of what you need. That plus your 150.
Yeah, so we got to continue to move forward on.
And what if you were to change some of those from tennis to pickleball courts? That doesn't save you much.
It doesn't save any money. And then you just factor in the Salt Lake County's master plan. They don't really have all the numbers they need to with pickleball, how many courts per. We know it's a very much a growing sport. They do have an idea of how we are with tennis courts, which they say that even the current tennis courts that we have were under what we need. I don't know how that works with the Brighton tennis courts, because those are, you got 8 tennis courts. That makes a big difference. But we are more than likely losing our 3 courts that are on the water tower come 2022. The Salt Lake City Public Utilities has found that the roof of that has been compromised. And so they're going to have to rip off the roof and put on a new roof. And then at that point, they'll ask us not to put any structures on it. We're still hoping that it will be available for open space, passive. I don't know what that means. Walk around it, maybe, I don't know. But so if we're going to lose 3 tennis courts there, the other hurdle comes with pickleball is that it's recommended that you get 500 feet away from a residence home to help with the noise. And so that's really difficult to do at Anzac. Otherwise, you can build a retaining wall of sorts, a sound barrier wall, but then you have a pretty ugly looking thing in a park.
Yeah, but that, I would challenge that. And I think too, if you look at NRPH standards and national standards with number of tennis courts per population as well as pickleball, you're much more deficient in pickleball per population than you are tennis per population. Substantially.
You know, it actually is quieter. It's funny, it's quieter than a tennis ball.
It's not.
But the decimal.
I know that.
I know. But if they do the sound test, it's just the pitch of it. The pitch of it is a different pitch, which makes it a totally different ballgame.
But they control that sometimes too. It's like in city ordinances about when you can be in the park mowing and stuff like that by certain hours. The same with the park, you know, it's having the baseball games around that park for decades.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's much more loud than a pickleball would be by just the kids playing in the park.
Yeah,
So I think those types of arguments are I'd love to challenge and debate them based upon national standards personally.
And I think we have some neighbors of our, at URPA this past week. It was quite a discussion of where in other cities pickleball courts have been built, where they haven't been built, and the problems that come with it.
Yeah, in the national conference I went to a couple years ago, there was equally as concerned about putting too close to tennis players, because tennis players like everything quiet. Pickleball players are more social, and so.
Yeah.
There's a lot of issues and it's changing, but again, my challenge to the special district would be, if you look at the service area, which is part of the city, you look at how many tennis courts we have per our population versus pickleball players. There's definitely a huge discrepancy as far as meeting a need. One, you're very close to meeting the need, which is tennis, because of the school district courts, which are made for the public, and they're used to mitigate those deficiencies. Pickleball courts, we are way deficient. And then if you look at, if you did yourself through your district, utilization, track utilization, I would say you would have as many people playing on 6 pickleball courts as you do on all 20-some tennis courts we have in our city.
And I think the other thing to factor in with all
I'll shut
that,
up now.
no, you're fine, with that whole discussion is, then you factor in lights as well, right?
That's a time issue. What time, how late they can play, how. or-
Yeah, or even the availability of lights. So Anzac right now is lit, and
Yeah.
so is Bywater, but
But the lights there are ancient. There's so much light pollution that floods out of those that they're
Yeah.
from the 70s, yeah.
yeah, so, but either way, like pickleball courts with lights or without lights, it's almost like we need pickleball courts with, we need more, and we need some with lights.
Yeah.
Tennis courts, you need tennis courts with some with lights, some without.
And the 6 courts we have behind the rec center are plumbed
Mhm.
for light.
Yeah.
But thank you, and I'm
Yeah.
sorry, but I do have a passion for that
Oh,
But
subject.
Mayor, just to be clear, did you say pickleball players are better people than tennis?
No,
I'm kidding.
pickleball players are old tennis players. But it's old tennis players, yeah. By, just look at, well.
Yeah.
Statistics will bear it out across the country.
Yeah, and I
Especially in
think we
probably
need to open up
budgeted-
that discussion again as we get the funding for
Yeah,
Anzac.
those residents down there, including one of your trustees, his own kids are probably understanding the need to have something on that side of the city. Yeah. Rather than have a one location. And you can do both. I'm definitely, and my wife's past president of Utah Tennis Association, so again, nothing against tennis, it's viable. But I didn't think Utah Tennis Association is now playing one pickleball.
I've just noticed, like, from a younger population perspective, like, it's a lot easier and cheaper for a 13-year-old or 10-year-old to get the racket and the ball and play
Mhm.
than it is tennis.
And you can learn within a half hour,
Yeah.
you're competitive.
I mean, a perfect
You
example,
want to do both.
I took my family over the weekend to play tennis with my 4 kids, and it was frustrating. And then yesterday, we went and played pickleball, and they could play.
Yeah.
It wasn't as frustrating, so there's a difference.
So both are needs, and that's why I encourage us to look at that balance. But Ben, thank you
Yeah.
for coming, and
Let's keep up with Salt Lake Public Utilities. I guess I have a hard time. Yes, tennis courts have been up there on top of that tank for a long time. I suspect they may not have been a huge contributing factor to the deterioration of the roof. That's probably a matter of opinion.
Yes. And they were quoted to say that the engineer has looked at it and feels like that might be the case. And it's like 40 years of, yeah, I don't know. But I might
You
need
can
some
build
help
a
with the
stronger
city of
roof.
what to use.
well, and
like-
if you need to go meet with Laura, let us know. We know her well.
Mhm.
And again, for the public who doesn't know that, that's actually a park in itself. It's called McIntyre Park. Everybody knows that. That's strange if you look at the old agreements.
Mhm.
And it's critical to.
I mean, if you have to toss in $50,000 or $100,000 to put in bigger beams to make it stronger roof. That's.
But
pretty-
I think the big picture is the public is used to using that as open space. And if it went,
Right.
if there was just a fence put up, that's
Well,
the
just the
obstacle.
humidity that goes up through that is, yeah, and again, like all the tennis courts, other than the new ones, they're not, it's not post tension or asphalt, freeze thaw, they crack, they move, yeah.
Okay.
Well, if we can help you,
appreciate
if we can
your
help, meet with them and just.
Yeah, it's going well
brainstorm
now, but
together.
I'm going to communicate it through Parks, Trails and Open Space, and then
Yeah, we'd love to,
Yeah.
I think Laura would be very understanding to that discussion. Ben, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Mayor.
I appreciate, and congratulations on the department award. That's cool.
Yeah, it is. It's
Yeah,
really cool.
yeah. If you can be recognized by, there's a lot of departments across the state to be recognized as one of the best is a real honor. So congratulations.
Okay.
Let you on with your family. Thanks, Ben.
Thanks, Ben.
Thank
See
you.
you. All right, now let's move on our agenda and review of our business meeting agenda. Have that for you. We have acknowledgements today of beautification awards. I think each district has recognized a resident in your district, and I think they'll be here tonight.
Some of them will.
If they are, I would encourage the council member in that district to go down and present the award, and we've got those
Got the awards right over here.
here and recognize, and
Do you know which ones?
yeah.
I don't.
Mayor, this is Mike Johnson. Sorry, I can't be there tonight. Hopefully you can hear me okay. Yeah, so like past years, I'll just plan to present an overview of the program. We've heard back from District 1, 3, and 4 that they will be in attendance tonight. The 2 commercial winners will not be here, and we haven't heard from District 2.
That's all right. But you'll present pictures to us
Yes.
tonight too, so we
Yep.
can all see them. It's kind of interesting. Almost every one of them has a zero escape component to it. It's kind of fascinating.
Yeah. I'll make it on the one from District 2 was nominated last year and was very close, but a year's difference. It really changed, and I mean, it was just amazing how much.
Well, when I did the commercial ones, I actually chose to tie them to the, and you'll see by the pictures, they're both excellent of small businesses that really added to the aesthetics of our community to drive by them, both Kim Insurance down here and Wasatch, Saudi Pet, both on Fort Union, so both outstanding. All right, Mike, thank you for that. We'll look forward to that on the agenda. We'll have citizen comments, public comment on ADUs. Mike, any last comments on that?
No, I'll give another brief overview. Just a reminder, we have to have this ordinance in place by October 1st to be effective at regulating the new ADU law. But no changes have been made since this has been to Planning Commission and received a favorable recommendation.
So this will come to us for an action item then later this month or
Yeah,
Next
Okay.
meeting on the
21st?
Yes.
Okay.
On that, the Planning Commission version had the no tandem parking for the extra spot, correct?
correct. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
That's perfect, yeah. Okay, we have 2 action items. One is the consulting agreement for 7th and East Sidewalk. Matt, do you want to introduce that to us?
This is the sidewalk portion on 1700 East between Fort Union and 7200. This is that section of sidewalk on the west side that is non-existent. It's on a safe route to school. City Council, through the budget process, asked us to look at getting that designed and figuring out the amount of property we would need and move forward with securing the property necessary for this project. And at that point, we'll bring it back to you as a council for the next budgetary process and how you would like to proceed. But this is the initial phase of that, getting design and property.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, we talked about this and decided rather than funding it, we wanted to better understand what our options were and costs, and then
Correct.
we go from those 1,700 linear feet. And Doug, I think, any comments on that, Doug?
I just hope, there's been some preliminary work as far as talking to some of those residents. I know, Matt, that I don't know if you got any of that contact information about work that's already been done on that.
We have not seen anything.
Well, from some of the residents provided us stuff a while back. This is
Oh, yeah.
before our budget process. Yeah, we've seen some of that, but a lot of that still has to be verified.
Some
have
things
to
could
work
have
through
changed
those.
between when that was done.
You know, we still have to work through and find out exactly where the sidewalk will be and the amount of property necessary, and then we'll approach the homeowners and have that discussion on purchase or dedication, however we approach it.
I think that's what we're doing this phase, get all that information and
Right.
determine how to proceed. And this goes way back several years, so appreciate the continuing effort to deal with that project. Item 6.2 is a consulting agreement for economic resiliency plan. This is with Wasatch Front Regional Council. It's for $16,000. Mike, I guess this is a matching grant or something, Mike?
Yes, it is. So last year, the Wasatch Front Regional Council was allocated funding through the CARES Act to distribute in various regions to help contribute to economic development projects and studies. So we applied and we're actually awarded this about a year ago, and it's just been a little slow getting the contract put together with WFRC. But this, yeah, we received $14,000. We matched with $2,000 out of last year's budget that's already been paid. And now we're finally moving forward with the signed contract. But essentially, it will look at, it's essentially a very localized economic market study that will look at the impacts of COVID and try to project out long-term impacts of our city businesses to help us prepare. And this will go really hand in hand with the general plan process. It's a good amount of funding to supplement that and help us go into more detail than we normally would.
Okay, any questions of staff regarding our business meeting? Okay, thank you. Hearing none, let's move to staff reports. And the first item is a proposed budget amendment, as well as discussion on police compensation. So, which one we're going to go through?
I'll start out. Scott, I'm going to have you go through the budget amendment first.
Okay.
So anyway, we have a proposed budget amendment that we're going to be talking obviously tonight with having it come forward to the next city council meeting for consideration. We'll do the noticing for that as well.
I'm sorry, help me understand. So you're requesting a budget amendment now for something we haven't talked about yet.
No.
We're starting to talk about it.
We're
right
starting
now.
to talk about it tonight.
Here.
It will come at a future meeting, which will be 2 weeks from now, approximately, if the council.
If you're not ready, then
It's a big number.
Yeah, so anyway, we're having the discussion tonight. We'll get council direction. If you're not comfortable with having it go forward in 2 weeks, then we can discuss that as well. So we'll go through the elements of the budget amendment. Some of this we've already talked with you about with ARPA. We need to budget the ARPA amounts. I'm gonna have Scott walk through that, and then I'm gonna get into the police compensation proposal at the end.
So really quick, I wanted to just go over the sales taxes where we ended the year. We ended the year at $7,894,000 of sales tax. Much higher than I even projected in our last, well, I don't know if it was the last meeting, but one of the more recent meetings that we had. If you see the trend here in the last few years, it was kind of a normal trend, I'll say, from 18 through 20. And then we've got this kind of kicker coming up in this last fiscal year that we just ended, which was really unexpected. But moving forward, our budget for 2022, which is not on here, is set at $7,200,000. So even if we were to receive exactly what we received in the past fiscal year, which we have no indication that we wouldn't receive around that same amount, it's about 700,000 more than what we have built into our budget at this point in time. And so I just want that to be kind of noted as we move forward into the budget adjustment.
well, then
proposals.
maybe you said this, Henry, but so then with that additional sales tax trend, the current unobligated fund balance is 4.5.
Oh, I don't recall off the top of my head on the unobligated portion of that. I can,
I think it was about 4.5.
yeah, something around there. I think total we're in the $7 million range, but then there's
Some of that is,
some that we can't spend and so on and so forth.
Okay.
But yeah, I think we're in the around, I'll say 5-ish million. That's
Yeah,
upper
yeah,
floors,
yeah,
5-ish
probably
million.
right.
And so when I did the quick calculation of percentage, I remember the other day we were in the 33 to 34% range, which our cap is 35%. We can't go beyond that from a budgetary perspective. You can have your actuals fall above there, but budgetarily, you can't go above that. But we're very, very healthy in terms of both our fund balance and in terms of our sales taxes right now. And just so that that can be illustrated, and it doesn't match really with how we adopted the budget. We're about, like I said, if we were to receive exactly what we received last year in sales taxes, this $7,894,000, that would be about 700,000 better than what we have in our budget this year. Just that one line item alone without going into anything else. And it's because it kicked up so high that we just weren't expecting it.
Scott, do you have any readings on that? I mean, obviously, it probably won't trend like this the next year, right? You can't.
Well, I don't have any indication that it wouldn't be good, but I don't have any indication that it would be this good necessarily, but neither did I have an indication that last year would be this good. Every month was like, whoa, holy cow, whoa, again. And, you know, it kind of caught us off guard every month how well it was doing. And Utah continues to do better than much of the rest of the country. I won't say the rest of the country in total because there are some states that are doing well, but Utah in general seems to be doing well and overall in terms of economics, comparatively speaking as a whole. Doesn't mean that there's not some economic, you know, groups that are struggling, because there still are some that are struggling. But when taken as a whole, Utah in a general sense is doing relatively well right now.
But again, let's emphasize, this is sales tax, property tax, you don't get that
We don't.
windfall.
Yeah. So the year over
Sorry,
year.
one question on that.
Yep.
I think last year we asked the question, at least Councilman Bracken and I remember asking, was to get a better view of those sales tax revenues and where they're coming from. Is it the sales tax on Amazon or different things that are now coming to our houses, our percentage of that? Or I think that's the important piece of this puzzle to understand that. So can you opine on that?
I haven't done the research on that, but I can report today. I do know in a general sense, online sales are through the roof, comparatively speaking to prior years. The other items that
That's all
we're
from
doing
my wife.
well, is it? No, we thank her.
It's all my wife.
And then the other two areas where I know that there's been good growth has been in grocery and home centers. And those are the areas where typically when you can't go out of town, you know, you focus a little bit more on some of those things. When you can't go out to a restaurant, you buy a little bit more groceries and those.
Would it be correct to assume that as inflation starts to go up pretty rapidly, that would increase sales tax revenue then as well?
Yeah, since it's a percentage driven thing, if something costs $1 and then next year it costs, we'll just exaggerate a lot and say it costs $2, then you would get twice the sales tax if the same amount was purchased. Now, that maybe won't always stay the case. If something goes up that drastically, you may not sell the same amount, but overall your sales amount will probably be higher than the prior year. So it can have a positive impact in terms of your sales tax collection.
And Tally can probably relate to this, not put you on the spot, but I saw some articles just this last week that, like in restaurants, an example, that first of all, they can't even find enough people to work. So I've been to a couple of restaurants in our city and just outside. They're not even fully operational because they can't get staff. And yesterday I even heard reports that the pricing in restaurants are going to start to go sky high to pay people to even work. You're finding
Yeah,
that?
labor is up and so is cost of goods.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then that'll increase that, yeah.
Yeah, and I anticipate that will happen. What effect that could have overall on the finances, it's very difficult to say. And so we'll have to kind of watch that. And all the economic reports and different things that I see, they're very guarded in terms of trying to predict what's coming in the future, because it's surprising everyone consistently, let's just say.
So let's see, well, last year we had the 5.7, this year we've budgeted 7.2. And our receipts were 7.9. That's the $700,000 difference you're.
Yep.
saying,
So-
because if we were being very conservative, we probably is that part of this budget adjustment? Are we going to adjust our revenue?
It's not recommended to be in there at this point in time. Sales tax, if you exceed your sales tax budget, it's not a big issue. And so I would like to just probably at this point in time project a higher amount rather than change the budget. And keep track of that way. We can always change that budget, you know, there's not a problem.
If we didn't have
to
a
change
fund
that.
balance, we probably would,
Yes.
because you need to show the revenue. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think we'll be okay. We will have some better year-end financials we're working through. We're probably 99% there in terms of getting everything into the different accounts. And now we're just kind of working through the dynamics to get the comprehensive annual financial report completed. And we'll give you some more reviews of that as we go along and get that information in report format as we
The
go.
auditors are going to be around soon, right?
They're coming at the beginning of October, so, yeah. Okay, so moving into the budget adjustment. So the ARPA funds that we received was $2,002,670. So what we've done is we've limited our adjustment to that $2,002,670.
That's money we received.
That's money we
received.
actually have in hand right now.
It's the first tranche of this. Next year will be the second tranche.
Yep,
Which
and
we
we
just
should
said that.
receive the same amount. We don't know the exact timing of when we could get it. It could come anywhere between May and July, and we just don't know. We'll wait and kind of see what happens with that. So as we did that, the amount highlighted in the yellow right here, that's amount that we're recommending to go to the stormwater fund, and I'll show you the breakout of that down below when we get to that. Other items that we've got is $10,000 for the single audit costs. We've budgeted basically 2 years worth of this because these expenses will happen into the future. So we'll need to put another, $5,000 in each of the next 2 successive years to be able to complete that. We've got $30,000 budgeted for personal protective equipment that we may need. And we'll review through that and get the things that are appropriate, but try not to overbuy, obviously. We've got $200,000 in here for the Small Business Economic Assistance Program. And that is a program that's still being defined. But
So help me understand what that even is.
Well, part of the study that you're going to be considering tonight will help us understand the impacts.
So
on
this is the
businesses.
placeholder then?
It's a placeholder. The county, for some of the businesses that
No, I
were
know.
struggling during the pandemic, the county administered some grant programs and loan programs to help them get up to speed. That's something we probably mirror what they have done, but we're
But the
still
county's
working
done it
towards
for the county.
They've done it for the county, but
We're part of the county.
we're part of the county, but where we're getting direct funding on this, we would need to administer this.
So will this be money that will be through a competitive process shared with our small businesses in the city? Is that what it is? Or is it
We'll still-
marketing for them? Is it?
It could include a variety of different things to help stabilize.
So I guess my
that
question
struggle.
is, so will a plan come back to the council of what that is?
Yes.
Because it's really
Yes,
nebulous.
Is the 200,000 arbitrary? Is that?
Sounds like it.
yeah, that's the amount we'll start off with, and if there's a need, if we see a huge need with this, but yes, we will bring a plan back to you.
And what's the cost, sorry, for the study? I just can't remember.
That's the one that's on tonight.
The 16,000?
Yeah. 60,000.
It's almost 10% we're paying for study.
No, the study's not coming out of this.
No, but it's coming from somewhere.
Yeah, it's coming from a grant that we received from WFRC. So,
Tell your small business owner, how would you envision? I mean, you were one of the hardest hit businesses probably during the pandemic and maybe even since. Where would you envision needing that?
I mean, everything that we've received monetarily has been some kind of form of, the paycheck protection program or title or, so I would think ideally there would be some math involved.
But what's the need versus the wants?
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
how do small business, what's the need? Like, I need this, this happened to me, so I need it
Yeah.
to do this.
Yeah,
What is
yeah.
that?
Currently, sales volumes are fluctuating wildly with fear of the Delta variant. And for us, fixed goods haven't changed, like our rent amount hasn't moved. So small businesses might be struggling with their landlords, a little bit of,
So is it more like a sort of a loan where people could say, okay, I just need it for cash flow, so I'm gonna borrow 20,000 here to get me through the next 2 months,
Well,
but I can pay it
this
back?
is
Like,
grant
can
focused,
it be,
right?
can we not revolve it
We can
around?
revolve it. It can be a revolving loan fund, potentially. There could be grant components. It's something we'll shape. We're gonna work with the county economic development on shaping something similar to
Maybe
what they
too, I
do.
would encourage a discussion as you go through the study is we have a business association within our community. That group, are you the liaison to that? Are you?
no, Doug is.
Or Doug is, you're the liaison?
What's that?
You're the liaison to our business association. So I would encourage through the study to work with them as well and come back something to the council because small businesses are critical. And so we do need to be sensitive.
16,000 seems like a lot for a study, especially if the county's already been working on this for the last year. I don't know.
Studies are difficult to see because everything we do takes a study. I guess percentage wise is what your question is.
There's also a concern that the businesses that are heavily involved with the city, that regularly are in the newsletter and show up at the events, they're going to be the people that we're going to be studying, but it's a lot of small businesses that don't engage in city issues that are going to slip through the cracks.
Yeah, so the study is not necessarily focused on, it's gonna focus on all the businesses and all the areas for the most part is what.
The Wasatch Front is doing the study. And they already have an amount of data, valley-wide, statewide, that I'm sure they'll all run in.
So that's just to clarify, that's our portion. Is that what you're saying, the 16?
No, the 16, I believe, is the grant.
So
Yeah, that's a grant, but
Like,
yeah, 16,000 is coming from a grant that's completely separate from ARPA. That was awarded in 2020 last year, and WFRC has just been slow on getting that money to us. We've matched $2,000 of that. So I guess 1% of this proposed funding is a match, but it's not out of this funding. It's already been paid and funded.
so
And that's-
our cost is 2,000 and we already received the money from Wasatch Front through CARES Act.
Yes, but our study isn't just to develop this assistance program. Our study is to look at the market in Cottonwood Heights, which businesses were impacted most, which actually thrived during the pandemic, why that was, what we can do to encourage and help businesses to be more resilient to future fluctuations like this. So the study's more wide ranging, but certainly the information and feedback we get from the study will inform any sort of business assistance or grant program that we prepare.
And the 200,000 will then be seed money to implement a program to incentivize and help them through these difficult times.
Yes.
Yeah, we envision this 200,000. We wouldn't use this for more studies. This would be as much as possible. You know, there'd be some administration costs, but this will pass through to small businesses in Cottonwood Heights.
Well, again, it's from the ARPA funds. It's not from our fund balance, and that's one of the criteria is to use it for that. Appropriate, and then a plan will come back to the council and they look at it. So what's the timing of when it comes back to the council?
On these funds,
Yeah, on the 200,000.
as soon as we develop a plan, which will probably be a few months, and then we'll get it.
So probably be next year.
Probably.
Okay, good luck, Doug and Scott. All right,
So the next item is 8,000, which is going to Utah League of Cities and Town. It's 4,000 a year to go to some technical assistance from some expenses that they're absorbing on their part. That would be our portion. That's 2 years worth of that funding. We'll expect another 2 years of that going into the future.
And how, may I ask, how is the Utah League of Cities and Towns working with us on our short-term rental issue? I mean, just generally speaking, as an organization, how are we pleased with their efforts and helping us with that issue?
Yes, in fact, I was in a meeting last week. I've been asked to be on a subcommittee of the Utah League of Cities and Towns. We started last week, and it all deals with growth elements within and legislation related to that. So we were definitely talking about those issues, and we'll continue. It's every other week meeting that I'll be attending for quite some time. I feel pretty pleased that they understand the issues and that they're trying to move some of that forward to advocate with our issues with short-term rentals.
And do they have any bandwidth for helping us with some of our trails issues that we've talked about in the past?
Yeah,
Some
we've
of the
talked with them about that.
legislation.
I think a lot of that's going to be coming through our lobbyists and pushing some of that.
The legislation.
Yeah, I think that, but I think their bandwidth is there as far as helping and assisting with that. I think it's something we're really gonna have to focus our lobbyists with.
Over the weekend, I was reviewing our 2019 community survey. And it's interesting that growth is one of the top 2 or 3 areas of biggest concern to our constituents.
Thanks. I was just, while I saw the name, Utah League of Cities and Towns, it's always nice to know that you're in for us.
Growth is, and we're not nearly in the same position as some neighbors to the south and west that have.
It's a different type
growth.
of growth.
I mean, yeah,
It's
it's just
more
completely
redevelopment,
ours is-
but
yeah.
it's still growth.
Ours is density.
Yeah, density redevelopment of areas of catching up in infrastructure. Okay,
So the
Guys,
next
go ahead.
item is the badge and door system upgrade. We had 120,000 in this. When we looked it over again, we probably need about another 10,000 maybe. So we edged this up to 130,000 for that system. It has not gone out to bid or anything yet, but that would be the approximate amount on that. The recreation service area, they have requested through the revenue reduction, 398,000. And I've taken a preliminary look at the calculator that they used. I have a couple minor questions for them that I'll ask in the next day or two, and get any questions that I have. But basically, I can see the methodology that they utilized in going through that, and don't have any reason to think that the amounts are wrong. The UFA has requested 71,791 in this. We talked about this before, where some of it's allowable under the AARP, state and local government funds. Some is not. So 5,925 is available. The remaining amount, which is 65,866, we actually have about 80,000 that's budgeted for capital items. That occasionally there will be a capital item that will come over from fire when they have to do a capital project at a fire station, and we don't have that this year. So we can utilize those funds to pay for the 65,000 that's there. So we don't need to ask for any additional funds. So we'll only have to cover the 5,925 out of the ARP funds to finish that.
so whoa. So originally they had requested 71,000. We felt it didn't qualify. We want to do it, but what UFA said, well, if you can't pay it, we're going to bill you anyway.
And it'll be probably part of the assessment
It's
potential.
going to be in the assessment
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah.
so everybody understands.
But we're proposing to pay it out of these funds with capital this year, so we won't have that assessment
So-
increase next year.
6,000 out of our ARPA funds, the other 65,000 out of our general fund.
Yeah, it's money that's budgeted in our general fund. Typically, it goes unexpended throughout the year because it's in there.
For
for-
UFA,
It's for UFA for capital or high dollar maintenance projects that could potentially.
because we
come
don't
through.
own those fire stations, so I'm perplexed why we're budgeting for capital.
And this has been something that's.
You're talking
been-
capital equipment?
No, this has been something that's been in the budget since before I started. And it's something that we just carried it over at the same amount going forward. And it's always been in there for, right, it's not exactly 80,000, it's about there.
So in other years, it's gone unfunded and we've just.
It's gone unpaid. Yeah, it's always been funded as part of the budget, but we've never paid it out, if not for the last 3 years anyhow that I've been here.
I
Mayor,
don't remember seeing it as a,
I've never seen it.
yeah, I've never seen it.
I mean, that their capital improvements are separate from the assessment amount for the operations component. I mean, I've seen that since I've been here.
Yeah.
There was a request, if there was a
To
need
be honest with you,
to
I've not seen it.
do repairs, okay.
Scott, are you familiar with it?
No, but this is an outside the normal assessment for.
No, it's just, when we budget it, like if they budget, say $4 million, it's right near there this year. There would be 4,080,000. This 80,000 is in a separate line item to cover these other items that could come across. We haven't, like I said, in the last 3 years that I've been here, we haven't actually had any costs come through on that. And they would be brought to your attention if they
Well,
would.
it's not a bad thing. It's just that
No.
it's there and it's
Yeah.
not funny. You can now use it and going forward, be aware of the two different line items, I guess.
Yeah, I would expect,
So the other option is you don't have it as a funded budget item, and then if UFA comes with a request, then it needs to be a budget adjustment.
Yeah.
But again, I do understand, and it was brought up in our UFA meeting, that many municipalities were going to fund this from their ARPA funds, even though there's a question of that being in the criteria, but those who could not, it will come through as an assessment because UFA had to take money from their capital funds to cover expenses for COVID-related items. And so it's comes out and this is how we'll handle it.
Yeah.
But
So
by
you-
doing it this way, then it won't be an added assessment next year.
That's true. It keeps our increase next year more, I'll call it manageable. So,
On my doors, something, oh, go ahead,
no,
Christina.
you're,
The door thing, have we talked about that before? Was that an
Talked-
anticipated upgrade?
Talked about it 3 weeks ago as part of the ARPA.
I don't think Kelly was here.
Oh, you weren't here during that time. Yeah, we talked about this and Scott, you can explain it. This allows us to,
So you know how some of the doors, you have to have a key in order to get in, like this door down here, you need a key. So it would make it so that the key fobs would work on the door, so you'd be able to get in without having to have a physical key. We have several doors throughout the facility that you actually have to have a key in order to get in that are not set up that way. Our current badge system is maxed out. You can't add any more key fobs out there. And so you can't just say, well, let's just add these, 10 doors or however many there are in there. Secondarily, some of the doors, like the front doors, will open if you push the button for handicap, they'll open up and let you in. The front doors are the only doors that we have that are set up on a motorized unit to be able to allow someone with disabilities to come in and out of the building, or in case of a pandemic, to not have to touch things as you're coming in and out of the building. And so that makes it allowable under this to be able to upgrade on those kinds of things as we move forward. And so for both items, though, it takes additional either touch plates or key fobs to be able to complete. And our current system will not allow additional touch plates or key fobs. It's maxed out in terms of what it can do. So the only way to be able to get it to work is to be able to get a new system. The other thing it allows is it allows a separate, I'll call management of the security, so that we can't get in and get into, say, police evidence, which it needs to be locked down very clearly. Right now, the police take all of the management of the key fob system because they have to, because of security with the evidence specifically, but also other things over there. This would allow us to have a separation in that.
It reduces our amount of hard keys that are out there. And so this just allows you to use your card to enter, and also tracks who entered and when they entered. It's just a better way to do business. And
I know we talked about this, like a big part too, if you have employees who may have need an accommodation.
It's ADA compliant,
Well,
basically,
it helps
too, right?
you
Yeah.
it solves that
prepare
issue.
to,
So it does a lot of different things. We would like to be able to just take the current system and upgrade it and do it. If we could utilize the current system and upgrade and do it, the actual additions that would need to be done are maybe in the $50,000 to $70,000 range in terms of the labor and everything that goes with it. The drawback we have is that the current system will not allow that much expandability in terms of its capacity, and so
I don't-
it
I'm
has to be
sorry,
redone.
I don't understand, I'm sorry, fundamentally, I don't understand, like, this is a fob system that's, I would think.
It has a limit of
mostly-
32 doors and we need to go to 40
Or something like that.
45.
Yeah, however many it is, it has a limit. This new system would allow
So
you
you have to get a
go
whole new
above and
system.
beyond. Yeah, you can't, the current system is basically being maintained, but is not being upgraded or anything
You
along
can't
those lines.
piggyback it at all.
You can't, no.
And we've
so,
researched that, because for $130,000, I'm just surprised.
Yeah, like I said,
That
50 to
is,
70 is just the labor related to getting motors on doors, key the badge readers put in place and those kinds of things, and that would have to be done whether or not you could utilize the same system. The difference between about, whatever it is, 50 to 70,000 and this 120, 130,000 is the actual new system itself. And you can't get like a small system and have it be, say, half the price. That's not how it works. The systems are, kind of what they are. And then to add extra capacity isn't that much more for typical systems that we've looked at. Unfortunately, our system seems to be slightly undersized for what we actually need.
It also allows us, if you have an employee who loses a key or you have to terminate the employee, you can solve that problem much easier than having them have a hard key that's out there and then try to have a locksmith come in and change all the locks. It's just easier to use the fob system and lock them out and enter new people and eliminate old people from the system.
Okay, I'm assuming we'll competitively bid all these things and.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And have you thought in the future, what other things may come up that we might be able to buy as a feature today? So that in 5 years, you're not coming back and saying, well,
Yeah.
it's another 100.
So.
It just seems odd with a new building that here we are talking about it. That's all. I mean, it's not your fault or your fault, but it just seems strange to me.
I've had extensive conversations with Matt Irvin about this, and he, as well as police, have wanted to replace this system for years, but it's hard to justify this kind of cost, especially when we have to pay for it out of general fund funds.
How old is this building?
5 years.
And so that's been kind of the issue that we've been facing. And so now that we have this opportunity to do it, then it's not our funds. We thought we'd bring it to you and say, hey, we would like to do this, because there's a lot of benefits that come in many ways. There's even ways to be able to potentially utilize a cell phone to create it as a fob. So if somebody rents our community room, you can send them whatever they do. Maybe they have to download an app or what have you, and then they can go ahead and enter the building that way, so that it allows you to get in and out, and we can set it up so it's only good for, say, the day of their event and different things like that. So there's a lot of things that we're trying to anticipate and take care of so that we don't have to come back in the future and ask for additional funds.
See, to me, if this was not ARPA fund, it would be a subject I would have back at a retreat and prioritize with all the other needs. But where it qualifies for ARPA,
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right, but there's also, I mean, it
There's a
has
lot
been
of
5
play.
years, the use,
a lot of needs.
some of the uses have changed, we've changed things in the city. We also were working with, constraints on, I don't know if this hit this, I suspect we have a presentation coming up, and I expect that a number that Jim may have on other things has gone up quite a bit in a couple of years. I mean, that's just construction and stuff. You do your best, and I know Jim worked with us on doing how are we going to actually use the building, and we've got pretty good, but there's always going to be some kind of a change. So, but I agree with the mayor, if it wasn't ARPA, it would have to be it would be a retreat
It
item.
would be competing with, this qualifies. And one quick question, and not to take away from that. Can I assume that by putting the 1.2 million into our stormwater, is that in addition to what's budgeted, or does it free up general fund?
So I'll show you down when we get down to that section. So this.
More to get through.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We've got quite a bit
Oh, we got
more
a
to
lot to
get
do.
through. And that's before you
We
even
only
get
have
into the pay.
56 minutes.
Okay, go ahead.
So Wasatch Front Waste and Recycling District has asked for $5,886. These items would not be allowable for ARP funds, but they're still requesting them, and in talking to Pam, she would like to see them be paid. This would have to come out of general fund. Again, similar to how the UFA costs came through, they were planning on this being similar to the CARES. There's a community survey that we'd like to do in preparation for the council retreat and the budget for 22-23. And that would be about $16,000 to be able to update that community survey that we typically do every few years.
This is the same Y2 analytics with the council have an opportunity to prepare what questions they want answered.
Yes, just like the last one.
There's a transfer in here to the capital improvements fund for potential open space funding that's recommended to be in here. so that we can be ready if there's any opportunities there. A police wage market adjustment, this will be gone over in much more detail, so I'll just gross over it quick. The total is anticipated to be 484,000 on an annual basis. With an October implementation, it would reduce it to 75% of the total year. That would be 363,000. And again, I won't go into a lot of details.
I'll go into
We will
details
go
on
into
that.
a lot of that momentarily. So basically, the things that are requested to be funded that are not funded by ARPA are Wasatch Front Waste and Recycling, 16,000 for the community survey, 700,000 for open space, and then the 363 for the police wages. The stormwater fund, all these funds here are the ARPA funds. There are some items that are already budgeted. So the critical investigation of this existing storm drain, we currently have 307,500 budgeted. There's a request for 825. So we would need to add 517,000 into that in order to get to that total amount we were needing. And so that adds that in. But we're going to fund it all with the ARPA funds, not just with the fee revenue that is anticipated to come in, because the fee revenue is now delayed till January. So instead of 1.4 million, will probably be more like 700,000 of fee that we'll get in the stormwater fund during the year. The Timberline and Quicksilver Waterway, we currently have funded at 101,772. We need 173. So it's another 71,000 adding in there. But then funding all of that with the ARPA funds. So that's a savings of 101,000. And then the Alta Hills Stormwater Drive Stormwater Replacement, 194,000. The Keswick Road Stormwater, and I didn't do this in any particular order, but the request here is 856,000 to be able to cover this. We're limiting it to just the 2 million and 2 that we have. So we're going to only allocate 28,000 to this project until we get the remaining ARPA funds. When planning to come in and fund the remaining 828,000 at that time in the future. So all in all, in this particular fund, we're increasing the expense 811,000. We're bringing in the 1.2 million in funds, so we're saving about 400,000. But we're going to lose about 700,000 in fees because of not being able to collect for the full year, with delaying the fee collection to about January. So keep that in mind.
So doing $800,000, Matt went away.
So that means you just kind of broke even?
We had about $500,000 increase to our fund balance because we wanted to have a fund balance for emergency projects. We'll end the year, if all this comes through and all the projects were to complete, we would end the year probably, instead of 500,000 better, we'd be somewhere in the $150,000, fund balance.
So by
amount.
replacing this with the ARPA funds, the net is about 100 and some thousand.
Mhm.
So we're lucky we have it.
Yeah.
Yes, well, the other question I would have, just other, I know there are other crossways and gutters in the city that are over, I mean, Quicksilver's not the first, and it's certainly, I would guess it's not gonna be the last.
There will be another 2.2 or 2,200,000 coming in of ARPA funds, some of which can go to stormwater things, some of which can go to other things, but I'm sure that much of that will probably end up going to stormwater type stuff in the future.
That $800,000 or $500,000 increase in doing a critical investigation, that's not something that's gonna overstress our employees that are capable of doing that much extra work? Or is this all?
That's contracted work.
That's all contracted work, okay. And then the only question I had was, I know there's probably more waterway works that are similar. I know we've done some in the past. Having any idea how more, is that going to be part of that critical analysis?
This is the if we're talking about specifically the Timberline Quicksilver.
I know there's others. How many more are out there, or does the first number one cover finding all of them? So we know.
No, in the past, we've done an investigation on the waterways. This doesn't even come into play at this point. The waterway that we have close to $800,000+ worth of waterway. It needs.
Similar to this. that all need to
Similar
be
to
done.
this,
All right,
correct.
so you don't, all right. Okay.
Okay, we're running a little bit short of time and I realize this is not an action item later tonight. This is still discussion. And so we can have discussion over the next 2 weeks as well, as necessary, but
So 4 last items there. So there's a capital rebudget. This happens every year. It's the capital projects that we're unable to finish throughout the year. It's 3,385,000 in expense, 657,000 in revenue. These are projects largely road related that were not able to be completed. If you remember, we kind of put things on hold for a little bit, got them restarted up, but a lot of these projects are either in the process of bidding or just barely finishing bidding, and we're starting to get into contracts with them, but they did not finish before June 30th of 2021, and so now we're carrying these funds forward. Trip hazard, we omitted putting trip hazard into the original budget, and this is a contractually required amount that we have, so we'd like to request to put 25,000 into that. This is the 700,000 that I talked before that is covered by a transfer in from the general fund to cover any potential open space opportunities that may come up. And then there's a request to add 150,000. If you remember, we budgeted for a grant of 150,000 for the Ferguson Park, but we did not increase our expenditure by 150,000. It now looks like with the bids that are coming back in order to finish that, we'll probably need that. And so we'd like to ask for that. So the 150 and the 25 would come from fund balance. So that's about 175,000 of fund balance. There's about 250,000 of fund balance in there right now that can be utilized. The 700 is a transfer from the general fund, and these other items here are just rebudget of items that we've already got going.
Got a quick question on the trip hazard. I know our deductible's gone up substantially from our the trust. Is that going to affect that?
On the trip, this is for actual projects and applications. that
Right,
we
but I
can
mean, just in general, is that been?
Sure, any
budgeted in?
claims or any issue, yeah, it's been budgeted, but as much as we can know at this point. But it's gonna have impact. Sure.
Okay, so that's all.
well, we need to move on, but
I need to go through the
we need to get
police.
through on the police thing, but the one question I would have is with all those changes, again, what does the unobligated fund balance become after you do all that? Okay, we'll look at that next time.
And then I guess I had something related to the set aside for open space. I like to see that we have a set aside in case things pop up, and there are a couple things that could pop up. But more specifically, that looking at the survey, what open space was one of the top 3. And it seems like if our residents are interested in open space, we should be I would like to create a legacy of open space from my time here. And I was asking Tim today how we could do that so that we don't have to have a budget amendment, that it could just be there and could be replenished over time. And I just wondered if we could walk that on to a future agenda where we talk about whether we could look at a minimal interest, a small bit of sales tax, but I don't know that that's allowed, or some way like we have the capital fund. We can have an open space fund so that it's there.
You could create a line item and you just have to budget it each year. Yeah, we can't commit to future councils. But again, a lot of things are carried over that way. I mean,
But couldn't we take some of, if we have a large general fund balance, take some of that and put it in that line item?
yeah, you know,
Like that 700,000?
Yeah, you budget it, yeah.
But there's
Yeah,
no
you-
mechanism that we could create sort of an ongoing revenue stream so that it can help as, this the little piece of
You
land that
have
came
to-
up near Home Depot that we were considering purchasing. Those things happen.
Well,
quite often.
that's what the county did in ZAP, where you take a quarter of one sales tax and they get like so many millions of dollars and they bond for it now, and then they pay it over 10 years and then reauthorize it. So the sales tax, there's geo bonding, I guess you get it, you could earmark it to do it, but
I guess, is there something that we can spend 10 or 15 minutes on that topic at a future meeting?
talk about it, because again, it's a budget discussion. I'd love to see it. Yeah, but again, no matter what you do in that realm, the next council could change it. But if they saw it, it's set, it's in place, it's like a lot of things.
Okay, you want me to jump into this?
Yeah.
Go ahead to the next slide, Scott. So
So I'll make sure that's.
I've talked a little bit in council communications to you. I've been in some city manager meetings in the Salt Lake Valley, some of the love, listen, and lead conversations over the last couple of months has talked about the challenges that we're facing in the valley, and really it even goes nationwide on retaining police officers and also the numbers of police officers. There's a large number that have retired, not in our city, but valley-wide, and or have gone to other areas to work, and it's created an issue. As I was talking to the city managers last week, there are multiple cities that have already started. And by the way, this started really with Taylorsville probably first, looking at this with a new department and bumping their pay up significantly. Salt Lake City announced in June, and you see some of the dates, bumping them up closer to Taylorsville. And then even after the budget was adopted, because we went through our compensation study, you had multiple cities, West Valley, South Jordan, West Jordan, and South Salt Lake all did substantial increases even after the budget process had occurred. And so what it's done is we're bringing this forward to you because we have a number of concerns. Other cities are looking at this as well. You see, I met with Harriman, Riverton, Draper, UPD's looking at some increases as well in Murray. Sandy is considering increases tonight, and you can see what they're bumping the numbers up to, an average amount, but up into the 27, 28. Our current pay is between 22.68, 38.63 for officers. Go to the next slide. So I've already talked that we've calculated, and after some research, over 100 unfilled vacant police positions in the valley. We're concerned about remaining competitive. We don't want to lose our officers to other jurisdictions because they've substantially increased the pay and we have not. And so we want to remain competitive. We also want to have those individuals retained. And go on to the next one. Go through this quickly. Go ahead, Scott. So what we're proposing as far as the budget amendment, Scott included, and I'll show you what it is. You see our current minimums for police, sergeant, lieutenants. We're proposing to go up to these minimums and maximums there. I've included in my memo to you. Go to the next. This would show the police officer pay and how we would compare. It shows our lower line where we're at and what it would bring us to on police officer pay. And I've included these in your documents. Go to the next one. Also sergeant pay. Once again, I included this in your documents. And then go to the next one, lieutenant's pay. And so that's what we're proposing. It would put us in roughly right around where Sandy is at as they're considering this tonight, unless they decide to go above what they're proposing. It would put us in second place. And then with those other jurisdictions that are going to be considering things in the near future, we feel it would put us in a good position as far as this proposed pay, even if they went up above us at this amount. Keep going. Budgetary impact. So the proposal is based on the current pay scale. We just bumped it up to stay within that second area that we're talking about. If we place the judgments into a lower pay amount, this would be what the amounts would be. It would be about a $65,000 difference from what we're proposing. That's not what we're recommending. But once again, this proposal described above allows us to be in a solid position for pay, even if those other cities come in at a higher rate. Go ahead to the next one. The cost, we've already talked about this, 12 months, 484. This is all in. This is wages and the impacts of benefits related to that, and also the 9-month amount as well. And like I say, if we drop to a lower level, it would be about a $65,000 change in that amount. So we're proposing that we move.
When you say a lower level, that'll put us at number 3.
Number 3 right now.
Sorry, where are we right now?
Where are we right now?
Where are we today across the valley? Where's Cottonwood?
Go up to the first slide. Okay, so we're at 2268 to 3868. All of these other ones, Taylorsville, Salt Lake Valley, West Valley.
I'm not asking compared to the new scale. I'm asking where are we currently
For those.
in the ranking before anybody changes anything?
We're
These
number
ones have already happened.
They've already changed.
So we're number 8.
Yeah,
When
the
we,
number three
okay,
have
when we
already-
changed, we just gave an increase in June to our police.
Yep,
And
Since
we
then,
did
all
that so
changed.
that we could go from number what to number what?
we were number 2 at that time.
We ended up number 2.
We moved up to number 2.
Moved up to number 2. Now we're at like 7 or 8.
Actually, in June, we didn't change it. We just did normal cost of living and
We did it
merit.
in
That happened
January.
in July.
Yeah,
We did that.
Yeah, and we were
Or sorry, January.
January.
We were told
at
January we
second.
were at number 2.
That, yes.
So
Now we're
this,
number 8.
this graph shows a handful of cities that are above us, but it doesn't show the dozens that are below us.
Well, there's
Well,
not dozens because there's only.
Harriman, Riverton, Draper, Unified Police, which includes multiple cities, and Murray are all considering changes, but haven't made the changes yet. They're considering it. I talked to every one of the city managers, not UPD, but UPD's also indicated that they're looking at changes. Murray's discussing it tonight. They haven't proposed anything specifically. The others are as well.
So I was just at a conference, like we were discussing, my industry's been hit harder than anybody with the effects of COVID. And we have line cooks, you know, that used to come in and work for $11 an hour, and now they're making $17 an hour. Those guys could jump and go across the street and make 20 in a heartbeat. And we were talking amongst our industry. You interview those workers and pay is not the number one reason that they jump. They jump because of lack of communication. They jump because they're underappreciated. They jump because of leadership. But pay was like 4th or 5th in their priority list. So
So we have not had a high turnover. We're at, as of August, we have our full number of officers.
what is that number?
We haven't had
Are we at
39, I believe, officers. We haven't had a huge turnover. What concerns me, though, is when you increase the pay this much in these other jurisdictions, and we know that some of them are recruiting, actively recruiting. It was talked about that in the city manager meeting. We are very vulnerable to losing people because of that amount of adjustment. We were talking $1 to $2. There may be not as big of an issue,
You
but
might want to check back when the city incorporated. I think we committed to 32 full-time officers. So we increased that exponentially. But our population hasn't boomed yet. We don't have the gravel pit in yet.
Well, that's a separate
That's kind of a,
subject.
that's.
No, I know, I'm just saying,
I don't think that's a separate.
When you increase your
Well,
staffing
whatever we
level,
have, I think we're
if you
talking
cut
about
one
what
or
we're
2
gonna pay.
officers,
If
you
you
could
wanna,
give that.
Well, you don't have to pay, if you don't have as many officers, then the hit of
Then the
$600,000.
that's what I was gonna say, one of the options, and I've done this before in the county years ago, is that we've had things like this, and we do staff to meet the payroll needs. You know, that's where you go. That's always an option, or you can phase it in over so much now, so much for 6 months or whatever it is like that. Where I'm coming from, because I know this is a little bit of a hot topic because of the history of what we've gone through in the city over the last year or so. I look to public safety and kind of the standard we set with UFA. And I would like to be fairly consistent with all of our public safety people. And Whitey, correct me if I'm wrong, but in UFA, we created a standard, and then whatever number the officers are, that we be in the top 3. That's the UFA standard, right?
Yeah, and it just like this, it fluctuates rapidly because all the cities are
Yeah.
competing to hold on to their.
Well, it's a leapfrog approach, yeah. But again, there's that.
Why
That's
would
just-
we, a safe little east side nook, need to be the highest pay? Wouldn't pay be commensurate with risk? Like if you're working at Kearns and you're in a high violent, I'm sorry to pick on Kearns. Say you're in a city with a higher crime rate or a lot of violent crime, wouldn't that be commensurate with higher pay? But we are this.
Well, for me,
quiet
I'd
little-
rather be here because of the community policing concepts. But at the same time, in my industry, we used to try and incentivize people for hiring. And I found out something different, that when you're at more of an entry level, pay is a much higher issue than you are if you're up higher.
Are we
people-
heavy on entry level?
Well,
officers
if
right
we're
now?
talking entry level, if you're talking 26
I
or
mean, but
7.
in our staffing mix. how many
Well,
of
I'm
these
saying if somebody's
39?
coming in at entry, okay, a dollar to an hour, people would jump job. We find it all the
Our
time.
chefs stay.
Well,
Our chefs stay.
well, that may be the case, but I also I seriously just had this exact same discussion with Whippert, and a truck driver will leave for $1 an hour.
Yep.
$6 an hour, it's like, I don't even care what you have to say, I am gone.
Yeah.
I mean, this,
What mix of these 39 are entry level, considered
Well,
entry level?
Robbie, do you know how many are 2 or 3 years? I mean, we don't have any that are like.
We
we
have,
one or two
those are the
years.
ones that they're targeting. It's not the higher end guys, guys have been here for a long time that are topped out, that are being targeted. It's the ones that have 3, 4 years that are being targeted. And yeah, sometimes they'll leave for $1 or $2 an hour. And you can make that argument. This is a better place to work. We have better benefits. We have great community support, on and on. But when I have, I mean, you've asked me to be diverse. You've asked me to present the best product, and we do present the best product in policing. The officers that are being targeted are females who are of minority backgrounds, who are bilingual, who have 3, 4 years on. And if you don't think Salt Lake City and West Valley and South Salt Lake are targeting them, and have already asked them for applications, and when they go to them and say, this isn't $1 or $2 an hour, this is $6 to $8 an hour. How do I tell them, no, you should stay here, you should be loyal here? Once they're gone, they're not mining any more Bitcoin. I can't get those resources back. Now, if you're just looking to put a warm body in a seat and say, well, this isn't Kearns, so we shouldn't have that. Don't ever make that mistake, because we provide a better product here than they do in Kearns or West Valley or anywhere else. And that comes at a price, and that price is training, it's experience, and it's management, and it's handpicking those officers. And we can't afford to lose that, what we have here. We can't afford to let them go. Right now, what you see is us being at the very bottom, and they know it. And
Wait a second, let's just be clear here. Cottonwood Heights is not at the very bottom. We gave our officers a raise in January to the top
everything
3.
changed in the
Hold
last
a
60
second,
days.
I am speaking.
It
Thank you.
changed.
But I take offense at that. When we as a council gave the salary, we're not at the bottom. We have a great police force. I think what Tally is trying to say is, shouldn't we as a city be looking in totality at what makes people want to stay? Is it our police officer, Nick, who goes to school for an education so that when he retires, he has another career? Shouldn't we be making better humans for our police force? Are there other things other than $1 per hour that are meaningful to the people that work here? And I think if we're just looking at $1 an hour, or $2 an hour, and as you said, it's the lower level people, raise those people that we're in jeopardy of losing immediately. Fine, that works. But after that, in the meantime, we should be looking at retention and what is meaningful to the police and our department that want them to stay here. And I agree, dollars are great, but as Tally said, there are other externalities that people care about. I certainly care about. I care about who is my leader, who is driving me, who makes me a better person, about my community, all these things. And I look at this presentation and I don't know, I struggle. There's so many things that I don't see here that I'm like, where's the beef, to use the Wendy's comment.
May I answer this or address this?
Yes.
We have not had high turnover since I've been here. Okay, we've had great turnover because of the things that we've been
And we
talking
were
about.
below the 3, and we were below number 3,
No, we were at it.
We
That's
were
what I'm
at
saying.
it.
but we were not for a period
Everything
of time.
changed
Were we
30 to
not?
45 days ago. Everything changed.
But we were behind. That's why we had to go to 3.
No,
We had to raise.
everything changed in the last 30 days.
What happened in January? Why did we have to raise it in January?
That January's 8 months ago.
Why did we
This
have
is,
to? Why did we have to raise the salary in January?
So to bring us up to market
To
to
where we were.
How
to
many
number
people,
two,
how many people did we lose during that period when we weren't there at the top?
we didn't lose very many.
we
But the
were
problem
also
is
around.
right now, starting July, we went from being number two roughly
In this
to
range.
7 or 8. We're at 7 or 8 in pay, and not by just a little bit, by $6 to $7 an hour.
What percentage is that?
Percentage of what?
What percentage do we need to raise our hourly rates to get to top number two?
I don't have the percentage. You go from 22, 68,
25%.
38 up to,
Well, we could be close to the bottom three is what I figure if we left it static right where we're at now. That's how far we drop. Is that wrong?
No,
How far would we go after these people?
I think you're absolutely right, and I think Councilmember Michael has an excellent point, because it's not, you've got to work, I have to work every single day to make this a good place to be employed. Cottonwood Heights is a good place to work. You are right. We tried to train them to that there's life after police work. I encourage them to get degrees. You've been very generous in the tuition reimbursement program, been very generous in the benefits program that you offer. And all that is great, and that keeps them here. And we do not have a turnover rate in Cottonwood Heights for those reasons. But in the last 30 days, this is an anomaly, and it's not just in Salt Lake County. This is nationwide, and this is just backlash of the defund the police and all of that. We didn't see this coming. I feel badly, and you have a fair point, that you reached out and you gave us the money in July and raised our salaries. And then 20 days later, here we are with our hands out asking for more money. But we didn't create this situation. And I am frightened that if I lose these people, I cannot replace what we have lost. We being Salt Lake County, are competing for they're not making any more Bitcoin. We're all fighting for the same amount of Bitcoin. And so we have to keep what we have, and we have to take care of what we have. But you are right. There are other things, and we should be searching every day. What does it take to keep them here? What makes them happy? And that is not a daily thing. That is not a weekly thing. That is something that me and Dan and my staff work on every single day. And I think if you talk to the officers, and Tim has, the mayor has, they will tell you that they're happy here. It's just on this particular instance, it is money. They are young kids and they are raising young families. And how do I tell them you should not leave for $6 or $8?
One of the questions I asked Tim when I started talking about this is, if you take that the proposed 26 or whatever it is for an entry officer, what's that, 50 some $50,000 a year? With what we're looking at to raise a family, if you're married and one child and you're working on stuff, I look at it that way, it doesn't seem unreasonable to me. There's no question all these items of, like Councilor Michael's bringing up, are still equally as important administratively, to look at education, to look at training, all those things. When you go through the budget process again, when I've gone, you can look at number of staffing, all that stuff. Those are valid questions. But I understood that, not formally, but somewhat informally, like with UFA, we want to make sure that our employees, public safety as well as non-public safety, we are at the higher end of market, because I feel when I ran for mayor, talking to a lot of constituents, they don't mind. It's like our survey showed. One of the questions we asked when we had this weekend, were you willing to pay a little bit more if it went to open space? Yes. That was like 60, 70%. Well, I think it's the same in some of these other things. There's a high standard of living and comfort in our community. So I think that, I'm somewhat supportive of this moving forward. It seems like maybe there's some tweaks. I think being in the top three rather than number two until we get more data bringing that down to 300,000 rather than 407,000. And I think this is an ongoing conversation because I think some of the points on education and how do we the training those things, we added more money to training. We're going to talk, we got 4 items on our police reform lines we're looking at. All those things still come into play. The bottom line, when we recruit an officer who's coming to here from nowhere, when they look at the 4 or 5 different places, if it's equal in pay, they're going to choose here.
I guess I have a couple things there. I totally
Yeah.
agree. I like
No,
your
no.
standard. I like the standard with the area of officers we're trying to retain. Right now, it sounds like it's those younger staff. But again,
that's
thank
what I'm
you for the banquet that we had for the police, because I love getting to sit with our police and getting to hear their backgrounds. One of the things that I heard from somebody at my table is that he was deployed on a mission and didn't get paid by Cottonwood Heights, and his family had a difficult time. If we want to encourage, if we want to have officers that come to Cottonwood Heights with a military background, we might want to consider when they're deployed that we pay their salary. I mean, there are other things that we should be thinking about that have this, that create sort of this space in our police force where we encourage veterans to be here by doing these things where, so like, do we need to be number 2? No, but could we be number 4, but have, that as one of our programs, maybe more tuition reimbursement as one of our programs or other things. And I guess, I know I sense the urgency, I feel the urgency, but is there some middle ground where we can go to that one area, come up with this standard, do something now so we sort of calm down, give us some more time while we'll think about these other programs that can make us great, right? Where we don't always have to be just jockeying up and up and up, but we have these other programs in place that say, wow, I want to be in Cottonwood Heights, they support these values to me. So that's the conversation that we started to have, Tim, but that's when I have these conversations with our police at those banquets that I so appreciate, that's when you learn like what our police officers are going through and how difficult it is when somebody's deployed that they may not have a salary except their salary from the Army, which may be 1/3 of what they were making here, or 2/3 or whatever it is, and difficulty paying bills. So like, that's how I feel our community of police we should be thinking about. That's just me.
That's a great point. I have a question. The first 3 years is a new officer, when are they trained? Do they start and how much does that cost?
The training.
There's
starts
continuing, I
day one,
understand,
so,
continuing.
I
But I
mean,
mean, the hardcore, all the points they go through, the training, they have to have that. I know they get it in
You have to meet a
academy,
minimum, you have to meet minimum requirements to be hired.
right, to hire.
But if you come in with added years of experience, or if you come in with a degree, you will start up higher up the ladder most likely.
You're saying what happens when somebody leaves, how much does it cost to retain?
How much does it,
Somebody-
yeah,
somebody-
if that
we have
training
to have
goes
somebody
away,
share
if that training goes away, you start from scratch. How much
cost per-
do we equate that
we've
into it?
tried to assign numbers to that. I think the minimum number that we can assign to that is $90,000 to try to get somebody up and trained again. That's a conservative amount.
And that's consistent with, there was a discussion on the Love, Listen, Lead meeting with
Right.
many of the other police chiefs that were involved in that. And that number, it was roughly 100,000.
And it has to be equated into this, doesn't it?
Turnover costs.
Because I think that you can do all the things that's been mentioned to try to get that family that we saw, that we see in our force. And so there's a lot. Pay is important, feeling comfortable, and I think we have that. But I think when you have Salt Lake they're still down 75 officers, I believe. They're advertising on buses, everything to try to get people there. It's not a fun place to work down there right now. So a lot of them are fleeing. New cities have added on, but then what they've been through, a lot of the wives are saying, I don't want you to do this anymore. Or if you're close to retirement, you want to get out of there. So there was a shortage, and that's what we're dealing with, because when things get rough like it's difficult to keep people.
And where are they going to draw them from? There's only a certain pool.
Right.
And that's what we're competing with. We're just trying to hang on to, we have a good thing. And we're trying to hang on to it. And I get that all the other industries have been impacted by that. I understand Ms. Bruce's point. Who would have thought you have to, start paying? You can't even get people to show up to work, at a restaurant. How can you run your business?
Yeah.
It's hit and hurt everybody. We just can't take that risk in public safety.
So Mayor, this is our budget proposal. Let us know if you want us to move this forward in 2 weeks. We have to do noticing and things such as that. So that's the last part.
Well,
We have other things we need to get through.
yeah. I'm hearing 2 points. Not to speak for anybody, so correct me if I'm wrong. I'm seeing conceptual support of identifying a standard of where we are, but I'm also hearing a need to talk about and quantify and get education, which we're telling about training, retention, and other what I'll call benefits that maybe not are tied right to the salary, but maybe more than some other city has. And if that could be quantified, and if that has a bearing on what we're talking about.
I mean, honestly, a lot of those areas, I feel that we already do a pretty good job. That's why we've had the lower thing. But yeah, I mean, I was shocked when I read that Mayor Mendenhall all of a sudden gave all of her officers $10,000 a year raise. That was just like, and then to be turned around in a few days after that, West Valley's doing the exact same thing. It's like, okay, this is changing everything. My biggest concern is even at this is Cameron, Riverton, Draper, and UPD. If they're still discussing, currently that sticks us in 8, but by the time they change and UPD's got multiple spots there, we go from 8 to being 16 and the bottom, and that.
Yeah, with what we're proposing, it would be 2 with these,
Well,
and then
But if
depending
any
on what
one of
happens with
those
all of that.
pops up to where whoever number 1 is, and they may very well, I mean, UPD's got an officer shortage, I'm sure they do. Harriman and Riverton are both fairly new. Maybe they're dealing with that. I mean, UPD is like Salt Lake and West Valley. It's a lot of officers. 75 officers down is a lot.
They're not gonna let those guys walk either.
And so, but, and the concern, the immediate one with that huge change, the wholesale change in what was going on in the valley. Yeah, if they walk, I mean, when we were looking for officers, it was taking months and months and months to fill the spot. And it gets, we've also had the one with veterans. And guys are out on service. When there's ones that are out on service, we can pay them, but we also have to have somebody that patrols the street too. And so that's either we
There's a lot of fear,
overfill.
a lot of fear mongering though in this sales pitch you're getting. We've had general managers countless times, they get their resignation and say, this location is gonna fail without me. And we don't, we succeed and there's always new people. And to say this is like Bitcoin, that's not accurate. There's not like a set number of police officers we're all competing for. There are new cadets entering the occupation every day. So it's a
Well,
lot
But
of
not
fear
at the
mongering.
levels that are leaving. And no, it's not. I mean, it's be realistic.
We're
I mean,
overstaffed
I
as it is.
I guess we could work and we can cancel it out. And we can just
Scott.
use that as the method to decimate the police
I'm sorry,
department.
Scott, how many
But I'm
people
not
do you
doing,
employ?
Well,
excuse
again-
me for being a moron and an idiot who
No,
doesn't
I'm
know
just-
shit about anything.
I'm just saying, you're
Excuse
having,
me.
you're having that.
Excuse me.
Well,
But I am not a moron. I'm not I do
I
have
didn't use
somebody.
any of those words.
No, but you're implying that simply
Here's
because
something
I
I
don't
wanna
have an
say
employee right now,
real quick.
that I can't know
Okay,
what
then.
I'm talking about, and you're wrong.
Scott, we've got many lawsuits going on right now. Council Bruce, I would appreciate you not even putting these kind of things out right now.
These kind of things.
Yes, we've got about $1 million because of your actions.
Okay, let's talk about that. Because
Whoa,
we,
whoa, whoa, whoa,
if we
whoa,
want
whoa,
to-
whoa, whoa,
Let's
whoa.
get
Okay,
off.
everybody, stop. We don't have time.
I have some things to say about
No,
that.
no, okay, we're gonna stick to the agenda. The agenda is police compensation and the discussion on budget amendment. We can bring this back at the next meeting if you'd like to discuss it further. Or, if we can agree at least on the standard part and then bring back the rest of the subjects brought up, which are retention and a lot of the, I mean, to me, again, I try and tie it to UFA and that standard, and we support UFA and that public safety department of police being in the top 3 rather than number 2. I can see that with an understanding that we come back and evaluate through some discussion all the other items, which are training, retention. You can even look at the total number of officers allocated. You can look at that. Mike Shelton used to bring up about, well, look at scheduling. You know, there's a whole variety of things that the council has the right to bring up. But fundamentally, besides all the other backstories and side issues, if we can agree that, well, not agree and bring it forward, but something where there's a standard that, you know what, we're going to be in the top 3. If you look at our fire department, our police department, we're going to be in the top 3. Now, all the other things that are tied with that, we can come back and talk about, or we can bring the whole thing back next meeting.
Here's a novel idea. So we're trying to recruit more women into this occupation.
Absolutely.
We have 16,000 square feet down there dedicated to police. We could easily have a daycare. We could incorporate that as a job benefit. You know how many women would want to apply to a city that offered free daycare as part of the job? I
Well,
mean, we could get creative.
I would love to see that personally, being someone who was in charge of about a dozen daycares a few years ago. It's quite a, from state licensing all the way down to staffing, it's quite an operation. It's definitely something can be discussed.
I mean, it would be a
You
phenomenal.
look at 21st South, we had a daycare right there on the main floor. So all those things can be on the table. The question really is, kind of look at both sides. You know, training, retention, staffing patterns, that's one issue. We have the pay issue. Okay, and again, I know there's a crossover of number 2 or number 3, or bringing it back and talking about it next meeting again.
I guess I have a couple things, Mayor.
Sure,
Appreciate
please.
that.
Yeah.
So we're still waiting to hear where our 3 other cities are going to decide. Are they deciding tonight, Harriman and the other ones? But
No,
you said there were,
Harriman, Riverton, Draper, Murray are all, and UPD are all evaluating right now.
so evaluating, we don't know where they're going to fall.
And Sandy's tonight, correct?
Sandy's, I was told they were gonna make a decision tonight.
Okay, so we don't have to necessarily make the decision in 2 weeks, but you could come back to us and say, I would like to see almost like a scatter graph that shows, because it seems to me when I look at this and it's hard to see, it seems like most of those salaries are all kind of scattered around the same place. So the standard, I like the standard, but you know, for 400, so you're asking us to increase our budget by $484,000.
If you annualize it.
And if you annualize it, which means next year it'll be, I don't know, 500 when cost of living adjustment, right? So that's
So how,
that used to be a very big number for us.
It's
to
still
talk
big.
about.
It's still big.
So I don't want to lose sight of that. So again, I guess I would like to see a little bit more data, the scatter graphs, so we can sort of figure out where does the standard is 4 almost the same as are like 2, 3, and 4 all near each other. I mean, where does that really fit? That's one thing I would see. I would also want to look prospectively at the past to say, okay, when we were not top 3 or top 2, how much of our staff was leaving? What over the last 4 or 5, 6 years, like what did it look like? What was the lowest number? How many officers? What was the most number of officers that we were short, and maybe some opining on maybe why that was? Because I think that's important. And then third, I think we need to also look at who's trying to grab who. Is it really that entry level police officer? Because if that's who it is, again, I'll say it again, can we just look at an increase of that level while we take more time to consider? Because $484,000 again is something I think that we need to think about. Not to say that I don't appreciate the police. I think we ask them to do a lot, an extraordinarily diverse number of things. We ask them to go on suicide missions. We ask them to do a lot, and I appreciate them. And so I would love to figure out a way to pay, go up for everybody, but just right now, today, and in 2 weeks.
Thank you, sir.
I don't know, it just seems like maybe a slower approach. I don't feel really good about it.
The problem with doing just the low guys, just the entry levels now and putting that off is something I've dealt with for years and time again, is what you do is you create a morale issue usually. Because all of a sudden you've now compressed everybody up here, people who are been here for 10 years that are now this much ahead of someone else who doesn't, because you moved everybody up, you didn't kind of make the adjustment all the way
And
around.
you don't think that's the same for the rest of our staff?
Of course it is.
I mean, if I were
Because when I'm talking
Heather,
the
or if
experience
I
I've
were
had-
Paula, I mean, I know
But
you
their
think it's
markets,
different,
their
their market
markets
is different, but
haven't
it's,
changed.
There-
Well, but I think all what Christine is saying is that because of limited time, we probably should have that discussion and make sure we understand it. I mean, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay. I mean, I'm supportive of the top three as a standard. I'm supportive of talking about training, retention, and staffing. And I would appreciate maybe a little bit more understanding of, because how many people do we have in these different levels? I mean, I appreciate understanding a little bit more, because again, it is a $500,000 question. Yeah, Robbie.
Just my last bite.
Yeah.
So you've known me, you've known this police department for 13 years. We don't lose people. You know why we don't lose people? Because we have all these other programs in place, because I have good leadership, I have good staff. This is a good city. We've had good elected officials. Those things are already in place. And the truth is, you've never let me fall that far behind. So I haven't lost people before.
And to me personally, I don't think we'd ever allow you to fall too far behind.
You
But it's
never
just-
have.
It's just education,
So,
understanding philosophically where we are at.
so that those numbers aren't there. We do not lose people. For those reasons. Because the truth is, this city is a good city, and they've been good to those officers, and they know it, and they want to be here.
I think that's true, and I appreciate hearing that. But again, this is a big enough issue budgetarily. I even thought of it, maybe should have gone back to the Benefits and Compensation Committee, but again, it's outside the budget process, but it's tied to it, so I don't know. But I have no problem bringing it back one more meeting and being prepared to move forward that time, unless the majority of the council would like to move forward.
At the budget adjustment, I mean, I had understood that, I mean, we're looking at possibly doing that next meeting, in which case we have
But we
to.
can do it the next meeting too.
Is that having that education in the work session before the next meeting sufficient?
I don't know. I don't know what it is.
The other question I have for you is, and I guess kind of some of the concern is if you set it number 3, that's where you want to be.
Well, I only say that
And-
because that's
And
standard
1,
there
2,
with,
3, 4 departments come in slightly higher, then are you willing to go and have this discussion again in November?
I don't think there's any question that the city council and I'm going, we'll have this discussion every year.
November. Because again, if Harriman, Riverton, Draper, and UPD all decide in the next couple of weeks to do the same thing that
Obviously,
Salt Lake, West Valley, South Jordan have done,
but obviously having November, December as lame ducks, I probably would discourage that. But if we do something now, I think it's appropriate. Then the new council in January, when they have the retreat, they'll reprioritize and look at a whole set of new data. But I think this is material enough that it deserves our attention now, because I think it is material. It's not just one department. I do see the trend. I see it in every industry. Like I said, I went to how many restaurants, they can't even, part of them are not even open, and they talk about inflation. That's real. So, and I'm committed to a strong public safety presence, both fire and police, that they're well compensated, they want to be here, that they're not looking, but these questions that have been raised are valuable to further discuss. And we've got some of those in the next meetings already, from training we're talking about, to the advisory board we're talking about. So all those things will still be discussed. But fundamentally, I'll disagree with Tyler a little bit. I know from my experience, that salary is one of the top criteria for people of why we work, why they work. It is critical. The other things,
I wouldn't say that about today's generation necessarily.
They want something more, something deeper.
But I've spoke to a lot of the officers and I speak to them every time I see them. They love being in Cottonwood Heights. They've been to other cities and they said it is different here.
well, I think that's true. I think Christine, everybody agrees with that. They have been here, but let's make sure that we quantify that.
Oh, exactly.
And give
Yeah.
credit to that when we look at salaries and stuff.
It's not a
again,
false narrative though, is all I'm saying. It's not to say, oh, we just want more money. It's
No,
because
no,
we
no, yeah,
have
And
to.
I, boy, I sure don't want
look
to say
at
that
it.
either.
Yeah,
Because I say if salaries are close, or even a little bit, they're gonna come.
they
here.
want to stay here.
Yeah, community oriented policing concept here is a
Right.
plus, and I hope I'm misrepresenting, I don't mean to do that, there's no question about that. But still, I think that we want to stay in that market, whatever we agree that standard is.
We need to, despite the, well, they want something more, or kids want. Yeah, there's some out there, but the hardcore reality goes, because I'm looking at 58 truck drivers too. You know.
Yeah.
The work for the public sector.
Whereas
And
full-time drivers,
a school bus driver would be the same.
you can't get school bus drivers.
You can't get them, and it does just come
5
down
minutes,
to money.
Okay, we've got 5 minutes.
Can I just mention on the agenda, I would propose, if it's all right with the council, that we move the Public Works Building discussion to the next meeting because our consultant could not be here past 7.
Oh.
So,
I'm sorry, when did that-
so
He just left.
if we can move that to the next meeting, we can definitely come back and talk about these other two after we need to.
Okay, well, we'll go do our business meeting. We'll come back and clarify what we're doing on the budget amendment. We'll talk about the TAP and Ferguson, Canyon Park and Ferguson Park real quickly. We'll be okay with that. Because I think our business meeting is relatively quick tonight. All right, so I entertain a motion to adjourn our work session and reconvene after our business meeting. Everyone make that motion.
Go Scott, so moved.
Well, who's moving? So
Second.
move second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Well, and I think it's good about having them stay.
Back there.
Yeah.